I love technology. It's not about technology. It's about the sort of business impact that you're trying to get. And we got to keep focused on that, because otherwise we can throw lots of technology at it and sort of it's fun, but if it doesn't pay back, that's not going to work out.
Hello, my name is Robert Schmidt, also known as Mr IoT. I'm Deloitte's Chief IoT Technologist, and my deep passion is all things digital. Today on my show Coffee with Mr IoT, I have Eric Starkloff. Did I say that right?
You said it in a nice German way. I like that. Yeah.
Well, my Austrian comes through, but I can't say Starkloff. I have to say Starkloff with a...
That's good. I like it. I should learn to pronounce it better myself.
It has Germanic roots, doesn't it?
It does. That's correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, welcome to the show. It's the second time we're kind of like interacting with each other, because you, as the COO and President of National Instruments, you kicked off NI Week today.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a lot of fun, wasn't it? And I got a text from someone that their favorite demo was the Duck Factory. So
thank you. I'm honored. I really had a great time, and it was, I don't know, there's something about standing in front of thousands of people. Somehow that feeds me. I kind of get excited by that. I don't know. Totally. Do you have that too?
Same. Yeah, absolutely.
You did a great job, by the way.
Yeah, thanks.
What was your favorite part of the whole thing today for you?
Oh gosh, the thing I always get out of NI Week is, I think we celebrate like engineers, and sometimes I always like to find the unheralded things that people do. I think making a better machine, stuff like that. That doesn't get celebrated in the world as much, and we have a lot of that in our world. So when we get those customers on stage and they get the adulation of the crowd for making a better test system or improving operational efficiency, I think that's really cool.
Okay, so you can't say Duck Factory now, but I'm still going to ask you, you've made a generic statement, some things that don't get celebrated. What would be one thing that you think didn't get celebrated that you brought out today, an example?
Oh, that didn't get celebrated. No, I mean things like, I think that sure.
I'm just looking for an example where you feel like, hey, that really, what would you talk about? And a good example,
so I think things like improving efficiency. I'll use the demonstration that you did, operational efficiency. When people talk about innovation, that might not be the first thing they think of, right? They think of like a cool new app or something. But these sort of applications, they have huge impact. I mean, these are the things that actually kind of enable us to have all the great technology that we enjoy in our daily lives, because someone did the work to make it more affordable or make it practical or make it even possible at all. So I think, operational efficiency is an example that we don't celebrate it enough. I think that stuff's cool.
That's cool. Awesome. So National Instruments, for someone who doesn't know it, if you talk to my son, how would you describe your company?
Yeah, we're the company that sort of senses and measures the world, right? So any kind of
senses and measures the world.
I was doing it for your son's level. I don't know how old your son is.
My sons are 18 and 22, and 19 and 22.
Then I might go different. So our core business is creating really software-defined measurement platforms that are used to measure and test things that we use every day. So whether it's a process or a factory that's being monitored, or whether it's a piece of electronics or your car, those things, the quality and that technology is ensured by the products that we build and bring to market.
That's awesome. That's very fascinating. We work together on turnkey IoT, and Ian and I always talked about the lick and stick sensor, some of the wireless stuff. Today a lot of your stuff is wired. Is wireless something you are going as a company?
Oh, absolutely. It's huge. We just launched actually a couple of new wireless products right after our keynote, and just this afternoon, wireless. A sensor node that has integrated vibration and battery and Bluetooth low energy, and then a wireless aggregation node as well. Let me give you an example. So a few years ago, we shared at NI Week an example of Duke Energy that had done an industrial IoT application, outfitted their whole factory with sensing technology, 30,000 data points over 10,000 machines, and it was really successful, but it was all wired. And half of the cost of that system was conduit and wiring. Half.
I know.
And so while they were able to get a return on investment, it was difficult for other people to meet that same threshold. And so wireless really changes the game. And we were talking about this sensor that we just brought out, this smart sensor. 5 years ago, even 2 years ago, that technology wouldn't have been possible. We didn't have the Bluetooth low energy wireless technology, the battery technology to give you 3 to 5 years of life. Just wasn't there, the low power
So the little thing holds 3 years now that you just
3
brought
years,
to the
it's
market?
rated for 3 years. It depends on how much it's sampled, but we believe many of our customers will get more than 5 years.
That's amazing.
Which is amazing, yeah. It's really, really cool. And again, that wasn't possible, and it totally changes the game. You can walk up to a machine, it's a magnet is built in, and you just stick it to the side. That's the lick and stick thing. You stick it to the side.
Is that still
and
okay to call it that way?
Immediately, you're monitoring it. Ian does at least.
It's not, your marketing heart hurts a little when I say that.
I can't sanction lick and stick sensor as the official name, no.
Okay, so then I can only use it unofficially because I'm Deloitte. I'm sorry.
Sure,
I'll use that. Eric doesn't allow me to call it this way, but I cheat a little bit here and there. That's funny. It has sort of like, everybody laughs when I say that, so it's sort of like people remember it. I get it though. It's interesting. So I said you're marketing hard. You have a big marketing background. You've been with NI for 14 years or something like this?
23 actually.
Oh, 23.
22, maybe 22. 22.
And it's been not quite a year yet that you became president and CEO.
That's
is that
correct.
true?
Yeah, back in October I took on the role. Prior to that, most of my background has been marketing and sales. I led the marketing, or kind of built the marketing organization at NI for many years, and then for 5 or 6 years I've led the global sales organization in addition to marketing, and then got named president and chief operating officer in October.
Have things changed for you?
A lot of things are the same. Some things are a little different. Now my responsibility includes everything from what products we build through the revenue that we get from those products. I have a lot of fun with that. It's a lot. I'm working a lot on strategy. I'm working on acquisitions to augment our platform. It's always a lot about people. Most management jobs are a lot about people. I've got a couple of executive positions that I was recruiting externally for. I just hired a new chief marketing officer.
Oh, okay.
Carla Sublett.
Are you able to let go?
I'm okay letting go of most things. We all have our things, but I love.
That's the hardest for me, right? If I hire someone to do my previous job, I sort of like always find that the hardest for me. So that's what I was asking.
One of these days, I'll let go of the NI Week keynote. Then you'll know that I've been able to let go.
Well, isn't it how many times have you done the keynote?
I've been the sort of main speaker host of the keynote for the last 10 years.
Oh, okay. So this wasn't anything new for you today.
No.
Okay.
I enjoy it. But I'll let go of that someday too.
So new role. What are the few things, when you talk to your team, what are the few things, the new changes, I don't know if changes is the right word, but what are the things you feel like you're really passionate about in your role now, in your new role?
Yeah, so a big strategy thing for us is we think of ourselves as a platform company. We build broad software technologies and measurement technologies, and they're used in just a myriad of applications. And that's been the historical strength of the company. Now we're orienting ourselves to sort of build on top of that platform to directly sort of get closer to the customer's end solution. So we were just talking about in the past, for sort of predictive maintenance and machine monitoring applications, we would just sort of provide basic acquisition and software, and you could build a machine monitoring system. Now we're building on top of that to create wireless sensing, to create software tools that automatically kind of do the right analysis and data processing. And so what that means for us is really being deliberate about where we're going to pick. And picking the things in the market that they're changing in ways that we know that our platform will be particularly valuable to our customers, and then we can invest in those areas to fill the gap between our base platform and their needs.
I know I'm not going to get an answer out of this, but I'm going to tongue-in-cheek say, are you going to buy an IoT platform? And I say this because I find that many companies are sort of like converging in this space. I find a lot of OT companies wanting to become IT. I find cloud companies wanting to become OT companies. Where, not what you're doing, but where do you see that all going over time?
Yeah, it is interesting, and I mean it's as you know, it's a complex ecosystem that's still, I think, forming.
It's too complicated, though, isn't it?
But probably is. Our position is really when you get closer to the I/O. That's the sort of strength of the company, and then we, are partnering with companies throughout that ecosystem. As you know, we partner with PTC, and we're obviously doing work with Deloitte. There is actually that complexity probably is pretty good for Deloitte, I would think. You guys got to make sense of it all to get business impact for a customer and help them wade through all the layers of technology, right?
Yes and no. I mean, there is some truth to that the complexity gives us work, but at the same token, it is complicated also from an ecosystem, from a vendor point of view, right? Because what happens is, people need to trust the vendors. I always say this is sort of like either team sport or family business. You got to bring a team together, but you want to trust the people you bring into the team. And when people shift in and out and change strategy, it makes it complicated to put a team together. So I think from an ecosystem point of view, I hope there's consolidation happening.
Yeah.
I don't know how you see that.
I think that also technology will help with some of that consolidation. I mean, besides the sort of business dynamics. I think the example I was talking about wireless, to use just one piece of it. It is too complicated, and so when it's just daunting. I know when customers we talk to are thinking about, hey, it should be possible for me to have, say, online monitoring of all my assets. The technology should be there. When they actually start going down that path, it's pretty daunting. And so, like, just one example, the wireless one I mentioned, like, if you can take cabling out of the equation, that makes a big difference. If you can take certain elements of on-prem servers out of the equation and do things more in the cloud, I mean, there's elements that technology can simplify and help customers see the path to payback faster. Because I think it's difficult with that complexity to envision the business impact that's at the end of all this. And I'm giving another talk tomorrow at our executive summit at NI Week about sort of data and systems management. And one of the points I talk about technology, but then of course I make the point I love technology. It's not about technology. It's about the sort of business impact that you're trying to get. And we got to keep focused on that, because otherwise we can throw lots of technology at it and sort of it's fun, but if it doesn't pay back, that's not going to work out.
I have this problem all the time. It's sort of like, what comes first? Does technology drive value? Does value drive tech? And I have this, I work, a particular colleague of mine, Stephen Lapper, and we have often these healthy conversations. He's like, it's all value. I'm like, but you got to build some foundation before, otherwise it's sort of this immediate value that you can't sustain. So it's a really healthy conversation. I find this really helpful to have both of us always there.
Sure.
So it's interesting. I'm curious, what's your take on, okay, so first of all, I have a hypothesis, and you tell me if that's true, but I think the cloud movement must have been somewhat hard for NI because you're such an edge company. You so live right next to the machines. And maybe that's not true, but what's your take today in terms of like edge processing and on-prem processing and cloud processing? Where do you take this? What's your take as the president and CEO?
Yeah, and so the cloud movement wasn't hard for us from the point of view of it didn't provide sort of disruption to our core business because we are edge-centric and we're I/O-centric. So you can't move I/O. You just can't move it, right? So it's sort of protected from that. I would say, though,
compute you can move.
Compute you can move. And I think part of for us has been trying to understand, it's taken a little bit, frankly, for us and our customers to understand how to where are the places you can take advantage of the cloud? What is the right distribution of analytics, for example, between the edge and the cloud? I think a lot of that's still being worked out, but certainly we do a lot of things that have sort of timing requirements and real-time requirements that need to be closer to the edge. But even that line moves over time, because ultimately with 5G, the real-time responsiveness, the latency goes down, and you'll be able to move things further from the edge, at least for some types of things. Some things we do, the speed at which, we showed a radar application this morning or this afternoon at the keynote, and the responsiveness of that was in like nanoseconds. That's like speed of light fast, right? So you can't be too far away because like the speed of light limits you. Not to get too nerdy, but that's true. And so that's important. But I think for us, it's really about, what can we do? What can our customers do to sort of optimize between edge, on-prem, cloud? That's another one degree of complexity, though. I think we need to ultimately have much better tools that can do that more seamlessly for customers.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I thought of this while we were talking, right, what's the ideal scenario for me? Because one of the things we talk about all the time is, where do I do the processing, right? Do I do the compute at the edge? Sometimes now we go all the way down to the chip, right? This processing that happens on the chip, TensorFlow and all those, right?
Sure.
And then edge, and then cloud, or on-prem, and then cloud. It's almost like, how can I not move the load, drag and drop it between the right levels, and we're not there. I mean, every level is a different company today, so it makes it complicated.
And I'll just say, I am an advocate for sort of things at the edge, and so I mean, clearly there's advantages to all different levels of this. I don't deny that, but I do kind of have a worldview that processing ultimately over time becomes close to free. And processing that used to be very inaccessible gets very, very inexpensive over time and can be put directly close to the, in our case, usually the sensor or the measurement system or whatever. And what we're seeing is applications that demand even more processing at the edge, almost supercomputing at the edge. I was talking to a company just recently, and we're talking about high-end graphics processing at the, think about your car, actually. That's an edge device. And that has an unbelievable supercomputer in the latest vehicles that driving autonomy systems and things like that. And the price of that's going to continue to go down, and that's going to be more and more accessible, in my opinion.
I have this vision, and I wonder what you think about this, right? I agree with you. Edge will become, I've seen an IDC study that says 40% of all processing will happen on the edge. And I have this vision that eventually there's going to be chips in pretty much everything. I actually wonder, isn't your testing going to become much more sensing over time? People are going to continuously test by sensing. Is that something that's going to happen?
Yes. Certainly there's still a need throughout the sort of design flow of a product and bringing a product to market and characterizing it, its real-world performance. But the notion that everything has embedded sensing is directionally, I agree. One of the interesting lines right now is sort of, like I mentioned this morning, there's soon to be in a few years, couple of years, the estimates I've seen will get to 1 trillion embedded sensors in the world, which is kind of an unbelievable number. Now, many of those will not be at the sort of accuracy and fidelity of the markets that we serve, and so there's sort of a need for these more high fidelity sensors. But over time, I think what do you do with the data becomes a bigger piece of the issue, right? That the software analytics does become a bigger piece of the issue because you'll have just so much sensing available to you in situ or in the device that learning from it over time will become more and more important. It'll be kind of the name of the game.
So where I was going to take this was that now you're sensing everywhere and you have these sensors which also have chips in it. Now you're going to have all this processing power around you. I'm like dreaming of this Airbnb model of processing power around me, that if I have a bunch of outlets that all have processing power in it, I only need half of the processing power for running the outlet or the light switch. I can rent out the other half to someone.
Oh yeah, that's pretty interesting. Maybe. Intriguing. Yeah.
It fascinates me to think of this sort of like, often people call it fog, right?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
I think there's no standard for that yet either, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting issue, and certainly, I think it lends itself to I think of like Airbnb as kind of a resource optimization problem, or it solves a resource optimization problem, an underutilized resource.
Exactly, yeah.
And so I agree that when we have billions and billions of edge devices for processing, there's an opportunity for resource utilization optimization, right? Because there'll be a lot of them in it. Not used at many different points in time. Yeah, it's interesting.
Very interesting. So I'm going to switch gears here a little bit. I'm curious, you get to see the coolest things before I ever get to see them because you actually test the making of it. And they talk to you, how can I test this new device I'm thinking of? Mm-hmm. So you're really very integrated in their R&D, if you wish, right?
Yeah.
You ever get to take some of those things home?
Do I ever get to take some home? I've taken a couple things home. Yeah, I've had a couple of.
Can you give me a story from the past that I would know now that you've taken home?
Yeah, I have a couple little things on my desk that I'll get from customers. So I had for a while I had a little. This is many years ago. Now this has become more commonplace. One of these pills that you swallow that has a camera system in it, and it can.
Seriously?
Oh yeah, and it will and it has a wireless transmitter, so it will map out your intestinal system and take pictures and everything else just from swallowing a big capsule. So I had one of those. I had one of the first wireless.
Did you swallow it?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I was assured that it had never been used.
Okay, thank you for going there. Didn't see that one coming. I thought I took it from
The other one I had for a while, I had one of the real early wireless light switches that's self-powered. I think this has become more commonplace, but when beginnings of energy harvesting years ago, and now these are more commonplace as well. But it was I think a predecessor to Zigbee wireless, and just the mechanical energy of hitting the light switch powered the wireless transmission. So it's a completely energy harvesting light switch. So I think stuff like that's just pretty neat. So occasionally, most of the stuff we work on is too big for me to take home. a next generation autonomous vehicle or something like that.
Well, that you want to drive home, I'm sure.
That is cool. Yeah, for sure.
It's so interesting. One of the things I love the most about the show is I get to meet people like you with interesting topics. And I had a doctor on once, and I asked him if you could implant a sensor anywhere in the body, where would it be? And he said in your digestive system, right? So the fact that you had a pill kind of like I connected it to, and I thought that was really fascinating. I have to say, one of the other things I saw here last time I was here for South by Southwest was actually a Bluetooth tag that was run through RF power in the room.
Oh,
there was no battery on it. It was
RF.
Powered by RF.
Yeah.
So that was fascinating too.
It's pretty wild. Yeah, that's a real interesting field too. I mean, certainly when you start thinking about your question about sensors in the body to your doctor guest, self-powering, of course, becomes really, really cool. Oh, here's another cool one since we're talking about cool things we've seen. I worked with some researchers a year ago working on an implantable sensor for breathing that's powered by your breath. So the inhale and exhale powers the sensor, and it transmits on the inhale and exhale, and it just gets sort of implanted in your throat. Pretty cool.
It's awesome. So in our week, first day.
Yeah.
We're not going to show this until after in our week, so you can freely talk about what comes afterwards.
Okay,
what are the things you're looking forward to for the next few days?
It's going to be a lot of fun. So tomorrow we'll actually talk about some of the kind of future advancements of our platform. We'll share things like there's new ways of having to measure 5G. We'll talk about 5G some more and demonstrate over-the-air testing. We'll talk about a sort of far-reaching future of where software technology can go over the coming years. We have one of our fellows and founders, the father of LabVIEW, Jeff Kadowski, will speak. And Jeff is just sort of a big thinker about what software is capable of and future sort of visualizations and design concepts that can be brought to bear in software. So we'll share some of that. And it will be, more like the things we're investing in for the next several years in terms of longer term innovation. So I always think I work on a lot of that stuff. It's an interest of mine. And I think it's important as a business leader that you have both, of course, a lot of my job is to focus on the short and medium term results of the company, but we have a company that intends to be around in 100 years. And so if you're gonna have that kind of long-term view, you have to be investing for the future, especially as a technology company. So those long-term innovations are really, really fun.
You talked today about innovation, and I get this feeling that innovation means a lot to you. Is that true?
Yeah, it does.
How do you keep an innovative culture alive within your company? What are sort of like your fundamental beliefs around this?
Yeah, there's a few. So one is you got to celebrate it. So actually, I talked about some myths about innovation in my talk this morning. I talked about the myth of the eureka moment. I like to talk about that one because there's this idea that it'll just come to you fully formed, and really iteration, I believe, or innovation is an iterative process, and it requires a lot of persistence, and we don't frame it that way sometimes, and what happens is people give up too early because the first version doesn't work or whatever. So anyway, that concept I actually first used a month ago at our NI Tech event, which is our internal innovation conference, where we give an opportunity for people that are trying out some new things, that have come up with a new idea, to share that with their peers. And so I kicked off that conference, and it's always a lot of fun, but so we encourage it and we celebrate it. And then the other thing that we've started doing is you also have to have a certain deliberateness to it, in addition to the celebrating it and highlighting it. And so we have a sort of a budgeting process where we put a certain amount of our R&D aside for long-term, higher-risk innovation projects. We have everyday innovation that happens all the time, but we also have a brand of innovation that you're working on something that you really have no idea what the ROI is. And at our scale, you have to invest a certain amount in that as well. So that's another way that we ensure the long-term health of the company.
So real money, celebrating, and persisting. I like that. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for summarizing.
I have to say, I love this, right? It was sort of, I think of when we talked about what do we do with the factory line, right? And I said, let's make rubber ducks. And people looked at me like, what are you talking about? With Deloitte, we don't make rubber ducks. Yeah. And so today, now people really kind of embrace this. And
it's
like
a playfulness to it.
It's a playfulness to the fact that we're doing some real serious value here. So.
Yeah, totally.
Thank you so much for being here, Eric. It's been great to have you. It's been great to catch up with you one-on-one. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
And with that, this is the end of another Coffee with Mr. IoT. And if you liked it, please hit the subscribe button up there. Rewatch today's show or any past shows. And have a great day. Bye.